We'll
Nope.
need to find anything.
Oh,
in my email.
sorry.
Now we're live.
Now we're live. Hi, it's June 16th at 6 o'clock, and this is the general committee for the city of Hendersonville, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. But let's do a roll call, even though our visitors would, welcome the same. So I'll start. I am Bob Garza, chairman of the general committee.
Rachel Collins, Alderman for Ward 5.
Jason Glow, Administrative Services Director.
Mark Evans, Ward 6.
Jay Ritterbeck, Economic Development and Planning.
Mayor Jamie Cleary. Chris Taylor, Visitor.
Jesse Eckneroth, Chief of Operations.
Eddie Robertson, Alderman, Ward 6.
Karen Dixon, I'm the vice chair of the general committee and I'm Alderman Ward 4.
Answering started.
Lance Ray, City Attorney.
Don Ward, Alderman, Ward 2.
Sandra Hale, 11 Arrowhead Subdivision.
Hey, Tallman with Lawson Point.
Wayne Tall, Lawson Point. Well, Drake's Creek Road. Michael McClellan, Drake's Creek Road.
Kristen Thomas, I live in the Meadows.
Todd Sears, Arrowhead Drive. Timothy Witten, Planning Department.
Jennifer Glasgow, Stop 30 Road.
Chris Glasgow, down 30 Road.
Mike Martin, Alderman, Ward 2.
John Barrett with Barrett Farm, Stop 30 Road.
Barrett on Stall 30 Road for second down here.
Scotty Bush, Hendersonville Fire.
You won.
And they're 64, so.
The acceptance of the agenda for this evening.
Can we switch 1 and 2? So that people don't have to say the whole time?
I will second that.
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent idea. All in favor?
Aye.
So our visitors don't stay through us some of the things they get boring. Okay, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Now we have citizens' comments. I have to read a little disclaimer here. The guideline for the public comment, speakers must identify themselves by name and address. Public comments shall be limited to 5 minutes per individual, which time is not transferable to the other speakers. All comments are to be directed to the presiding officer, that's me, not to the alderman, city staff, or other members of the public. Comments must address issues, not individuals or personalities. Personal attacks shall not be tolerated. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures, but the motives of those with differing views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. So we have 2 people speaking tonight. The person we have is Kristen Thomas on Creek Glen Court.
Hi, my name is Kristen Thomas, live on Creek Glen Court, 1009, in the Meadows. I'm particularly interested in what you guys are having planned for Stop 30. Most of us are actually very concerned about that over there. Stop 30 as a road particularly has not been very good and has not been maintained. Neither has the roads in my neighborhood particularly. I know that's something that you guys have heard from many of my neighbors about. In addition, we're concerned about the creek that runs by Indian Lake / Figs Creek and how the water management has been, because we have seen some flooding. There's also some minor tributaries that come off and feed into that I actually live along and have experienced some flooding. I'm concerned that the development will actually exacerbate that issue. I'd be curious to see how you plan on doing that, considering there's a hotel, conference center, and a lot of concrete planned and not a whole lot of green space to soak up a lot of the rainwater we already have a problem with. And so judging from the number of people in the room and where they're all located, I believe that they are also interested in what you guys have planned, and would ask respectfully that you keep what we have to say in mind, given that we are the ones that have to live in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have Chris Taylor.
Should I just wait until we get into the discussion? If it's all right, sir, I'll defer till we actually get to the rest, the number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
These are forwards.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Thank you. Okay, so next we have ordinance and resolutions. So number 2 is now number 1. And that's the reading of resolution 2025-21, a resolution to explore the feasibility of a planned development, because there's the hotel and conference center on Stop 30 Road. So before we get going with too much, I wanted to say something here. I was wondering why this didn't go to planning to begin with, and it actually did, but not through planning. Planning's just asking us if it's something that could happen, then they would get involved and begin the planning process long before it would come to a vote, whether through general again or even through BOMA. But so we're really here to talk about this, and I'm glad that, many people in this area are here for that reason too. But there will be no planning of anything going on tonight. This is just to see if it's feasible to look at this as a possibility. So I want to be very clear. Nothing's happening tonight in this situation. So comments?
Mayor's item.
So, it's a little bit odd that we're dealing with this before it's going to planning, before we have drawings, that kind of thing. My understanding from the folks on the property is they're just trying to get input from the board, input from residents. There's a possibility that what they propose is something that's satisfactory and solves some of the problems that we have out there. One of the problems to me is that this property is zoned and could have dozens and dozens of houses out there.
194.
That's a problem for me. It's a real big problem. But also keep in mind that, in the wording of this is that, they're asking for general support to explore the concept. They're asking the planning commission to consider, as well as to look at potential negative effects. And they're also trying to get a sense from the board that the board supports consideration. I appreciate your comments. I think that goes to your comments, is that no decisions are being made here. But I'd like to have as much input as possible for the folks that own this property and look at this property. I don't have my mind made up, and I don't think anybody has their mind made up on this at all. The more input we get now, the better project we're going to get in the future.
So one question, and I know part of Stop 30 is in our capital projects future workshop. Is it a possibility that getting something done on Stop 30, whether it's residential homes or whether it's this convention center / hotel, whatever that may or not be, would that help with the capital projects?
With the residential,
Because the flooding is an issue, we all know that.
with the residential homes, they could go forward with residential homes without making improvements to the road.
Okay, but not the commercial.
Well, we have leverage in that situation.
Okay. Because it's not my ward, obviously. I know whose ward it is, but I have friends over there and they're constantly talking about that. And I understand it, but I know it's in capital projects, so.
But Mayor, isn't it true that when a development is considered, the planning department does often require off-site improvements, which could be improvements to Stop 30. In addition, the board is also looking at impact fees, and those impact fees could also help contribute toward improvements for Stop 30. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, we haven't had a lot of time with this, and because it hasn't gone through planning, we don't have a whole lot of details. So my feedback at this point is almost just a gut reaction, since we don't have a super lot of information. But the positives for it are that we could certainly use a conference center in our area. I get complaints all the time from dance recital moms that they have to go to teabag. That's just
Sisters.
very, and that's just very high level. So I know that there's a use, it's not going to sit there empty all the time. And of course, the tax revenue that we bring in, I feel certain we'll find a way to spend. Yeah, right. But we have not gone to bid for the bridge repair on Stop 30. And we've had a lot of our bids come back significantly higher than we anticipated they would. So I'm concerned because at this time our fire trucks can't use that bridge due to the weight of the truck, and we certainly can't have anything there if fire trucks have to go all the way around the world to get to them. That's one. I would feel more comfortable even considering this if The bridge had already gone to bid and we knew we were proceeding immediately with that rather than the possibility that we're gonna have to come up with a significant amount more money and have a delay due to a funding issue on our part. The other thing for me is that when I look at the renderings for like the near term versus the long term plan for Stop 30, I would feel more open to this if the long term plan were the immediate plan for Stop 30 with the divided median and the protected left turn lanes and not just the slight widening of the road with the shoulders being increased, which I'm really tickled to death for that to happen and the bridge. I think that's a big improvement for what we have now. But I'm concerned that it's not enough. So, because I'm liaison for the IDB and Jay and Chris were there on Thursday. I know that that board is open to doing a TIF or a PID or some other vehicle to help get additional funding that could be used for infrastructure. So there is a possibility for significant improvements. But the biggest question in my mind is this little X in the diagram that's from Davidson Academy that would eventually connect over to New Shackle. Like, when would that, I mean, that could be 15 or 20 years. And in the meantime, Stop 30 is still the cut through and it's increased as the use as a cut through, which is why it's just a lot easier to entertain if we move towards the long term versus the new term. And can anybody tell me when Shackle Island, New Shackle is going to be improved through there?
I looked it up and I think it's 3025. I live right off of it, so I deal with it every day.
Capital Projects has looked at that and it's not even on the drawing with
No.
state. It will be after exit 8 is fixed, and we know how long that's gonna be. So there's nothing on the drawing board for the state, since it's a state.
I mean, I'm not willing to completely close my mind to it, but I have concerns that I'm not sure we can overcome before it goes through planning. And it's really, I understand that they're just saying, give us a quick no if it's a quick no. But if I vote yes, I feel like an obligation almost to continue to vote yes. And it's difficult for me to make a commitment for something that doesn't have this level of detail. And I don't know. Right now, I'm just kind of neutral.
I'm the same way, and I feel like, I do not feel an obligation if I vote yes or no tonight, because it's a different question.
It is, you're right.
And so tonight, moving it forward, I don't want to put so much on our planning committee and our planning department, and then it be a failure in the end. And I'm really worried that that infrastructure over there is not ready. It is just not. And I just don't think I think there might be a better place for this. Maybe right off 386 somewhere. I mean, really right off 386, and not in where there are some beautiful homes and beautiful subdivisions right across the street. So,
Well, that's why we're talking, but,
right.
and listen, when I think about this, and I've read this a few times to be sure what it's about, it would appear, and correct me, Mayor Claire, if I'm wrong, it would appear that, right now, those two parcel owners, zone, residential, could put almost 200 houses on it.
And Jay's.
Yeah, that's correct. Correct, Jay. And so, I mean, they could do that tomorrow. And they have to go through planning, but my point is it's zoned that way. They could do that, and how that would affect most of the people in this room would be negative to most you know, my opinion based while they're here, is that would be pretty negative too.
They've got vested rights in that at this point. It'd be hard for us to stop them. Now
Correct.
we could leverage a little bit as far as what our expectations are for offsite improvements, and we could suggest informal impact fees, but
Right.
they would be following the zoning. Typically, the impact fees, as informal as they are, informal when the zoning is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I think Chris can probably help us out a little bit too.
Yeah, we can speak to how we got here with Chris, how we got here, and then I can give a little bit more detail on if this was to move forward, what that would look like and on our part, as well as what they would have to do to satisfy all the zoning requirements, et cetera. So we also have our assistant planning director here to speak to some of that as well. But if you guys are interested in hearing a little bit more of that detail, I invited Chris to give that kind of background,
yes, please.
and I'm happy to answer.
I want the people in the room to hear some.
Well, and that's, if y'all are comfortable, I'll kind of hear it this way, so we can all talk. And as long, if you don't mind, if y'all have a question, just interrupt me, because I'll start rolling and it'll be a little bit of verbal vomit. You'll be like, "Ooh, slow down." But where it started was, just so you understand, we've had a lot of conversations over the years about the need for a convention center conference hall. And what happened was, there's a thing called a 3-star grant. And it's a grant that comes from the state. It goes through the county. Ford Center is actually a recipient of it. And what it does, it calls for a community meeting. And at that community meeting, you establish what goals are, what the priorities are, and what you want. And there were about 65 people there that day. It was about a month and a half ago. When we had it, there were 3 things that came up that were really pressing. First and foremost was, one was obviously childcare. And that comes up every time, and you have to look at ways to handle that. Another was honestly the need for a conference center convention hall. As a Christian, I think it's really cool that the 2 largest places you can have and meet anywhere in this county is Long Hollow and Northfield. That's not the best in the world when we want to attract conventions, tourism, things like that. So we had a meeting with Mark Efros. He's our tourism director for the county. And we started talking about the benefits of having one, how we would get one. And I'll be honest, when you start talking to the different municipal leaders, county leaders, and even state leaders, and all of them say, "Hey, that's a great idea," you start going, "Okay, that's probably an easy one," as far as why. And the why is, you're going to be able to pull in the tourism dollars from Nashville. There's a lot of people that want to come to Nashville and do a convention, don't want to pay those prices, so they don't. Nonprofits, smaller, mid-sized organizations. So they're looking for a place that might hold 400 people. So it's not huge. When you think of a big convention center, I don't want you to think of downtown, because it's not that. And that's the idea is, is it big enough to support what you need coming in, but not so big that it goes under. And the number you hear routinely, we haven't done a feasibility study yet, is about 400 people. And that's going to be around 15 acres tops when you start doing everything. So that's why when it started looking at the location, we said, okay, everybody thinks, okay, it probably need a convention center somewhere between, and they're also looking at one in Gallatin too, I'll tell you. So the idea is you have one, you understand why you want one. Why would you want it there in the city? Well, you've got all the parks that are right down the road. So that ties in tourism. It also ties in, the large tournaments that we have and things like that. So then you start saying, okay, what makes sense around there? And you think you've got Indian Lake Village on one end for restaurants, things. And there's a walkability that you can create from that site towards Indian Lake Village and kind of connecting all of it. Then you also have Glenbrook, which is on the other side. And a small disclosure, I lived at 1018 Marshall Street 18 years ago. So I'm very familiar with Stop 30 Road. To be quite frank, it's the exact same as it was when I lived there 18 years ago. And it's not going to be up for handling anything more. It can't handle a convention center, I'll tell you that right now. It cannot handle 200 homes for sure. The idea would be, and again, it's a lot of things that have to fall into place. But just in theory is you're going to be able to have a roadway that you can create that's going to be more commercial driven, that's separate from Stop 30 Road, parallels it, and maybe connects Glenbrook with Indian Lake with the idea that is the cut through. But it's a cut through that's designed to handle the traffic. It's a cut through that is, following through the traffic plans and everything else makes sense and goes with the flow. Relieve Stop 30 so that Stop 30 is doing what it's supposed to do, which is just for the residents that are there. And then also allows you to create some infrastructure changes. And all of y'all are familiar, but most of our roads in this city and for the most part, the county are made by developers where there's a subdivision, you require them to make it because it's just really expensive otherwise, and then they turn the road over to the city or the county. So the idea is it'd be the same thing. You're gonna put it on the developers to kind of really carry the load for this infrastructure, create a system that makes sense, that benefits the city, benefits everybody there. And that's one of the things Forward Summer is more than willing to do the community meetings and sponsor, because I think it's really important on something like this that you get everybody's take, because it's going to hopefully be a benefit. It's going to bring in tax dollars. It's going to bring in jobs. It's going to bring in tons of tourism money, but it's got to fit. And when we were on the commission, we always had a saying like, it's a privilege to live in Sumner County. It's a privilege more so to even build in Sumner County. And if you're going to build here, wherever it be, it's got to be better than what you did. So with that same principle, we've kind of looked at, we said, how could a project like this make sense to where it's going to benefit everybody that lives out there. It's going to benefit the residents of Hendersonville, and it'll help Sumner County in a way that where they can recruit and do different things. And that's why very rough estimate. And like we said, the reason it's so rough right now is because we haven't gotten all the input from everybody yet. And you haven't got enough to say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's keep exploring. And I would just tell you on something like this, there's a lot of different things that have to fall into place. And so you've got to have one of the big three hotels that says, yeah, we'll do something there. Marriott, whichever one, because if you don't have the points associated with it, nobody's going to stay there. So it's little things like that that you have to check those boxes. So when we say something like this, I know I'm with Rachel. I would love to have a road developed tomorrow that was there and that would relieve stop 30. And it makes perfect sense. That's probably not going to happen real fast, but it's not going to happen at all if we don't plan for it. We don't start taking those means to put into place to do it. And then the simple stuff like what kind of hotel, where would it be, how big? Those are all things we're going to work on. Going back to that 3-star meeting we had, the reason it came up was the convention center. So we're asking the state for $50,000 for some of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back and put 25,000 in Hendersonville and 25,000 in Gallatin, with the idea that that's to find for the feasibility of, hey, is this to your point, Karen, is this the best place in the county, in the city for it? Does it make sense? Is this the most viable location? How big should it be? You know, because you don't want it bigger than it should. You don't want it too small where it's ineffective. And those are all things we have to get answers to. But you're not going to get those answers until we start kind of checking a few boxes along the way. And so that's part of that process. I say again, and then kind of where we get to, the next steps are kind of, it's a muddled process in my mind, because you do need to have people say, okay, it's okay to do it. Like the IDB said, yeah, we're not opposed to it. And that's really the answer you want initially. When I look around the room, you don't need to say yes to this. I would. I mean, it's like some scribbling on a piece of paper and a little map. You don't ever say yes to that. If you do, I got a bridge for you. But the reason I say, but what we say is we don't say no or yes, we're open to the possibility. It's just, we just need to know is it feasible. And then you go to the next step. Is it still feasible? Does it make sense? And then at a certain point, you've answered enough questions. You're like, okay, here's where it should be. Here's how big it should be. Here's what it'll do for the roads. And you can start putting some of that on paper. And that's when, in my mind, you start coming to it. It's like, okay, now we need to decide do or don't we? But you really can't make an answer either way, like you said, Gary, because, and Rachel, I would never want you to. And I think what's great about the way that y'all have done your codes, this would be a PUD, right, Jay? To a degree.
It'd be a planned office.
Mm-hmm. So when you start talking, and if y'all know what a PUD means, what that just means is it's just, hey, it gives a little more creativity for how you can space and how you can put it, reservoir, water, things like that. But more importantly, it gives you 2 bites at it. So it's like, okay, we'll approve it. And then as it comes along, there's stages that have to be approved again. And that's what I'm really favorable of, is it kind of keeps the developers and everybody on task for what you want. And if there's some things that pop up along the way, you can address it. And I think that's a big part of it is, as a project like this develops, you say, okay, it's in theory, it's not terrible, Chris, but how do we get there? Well, we start just kind of checking these boxes a little bit.
So one of the other things when you're looking at presenting an option to one of the big threes to come and to do this, it's not, the land use designations don't match, the zoning doesn't match. So it's a no on their part, because the amount of lift required for them to go through a process that doesn't know what an outcome is not worth the time just even looking at these properties. So this reso really just gives them a the minimal amount of comfort that it's a possibility. And the resolution draft indicates all the different hoops that they're going to need to, as far as aesthetics, biology, traffic circulation, sound, is all of that needs to be addressed during the planning process. But the the way it's set up is explore this a little further, knowing that you're going to be grilled on all these things and that your plan is going to have to go through the planning commission, who they're going to require all these before it even goes to BOMA, because it's going to require stop 30 land use plan, transportation plan. It's going to need to be some amendments to that in order for the land use designations to change. And more than likely, even the roads, how those are configured, are going to need to be amended in that plan. It's going to need to have a rezoning as well. So, and then there's going to be that planned overlay for office. And when you rezone something to office, it has a laundry list of allowable uses. We can actually go in and tailor which of those we take off that menu, add on some additional ones, change the percentages. That planned office development would allow the most flexibility on their part to ask for things, but also gives the city the most leverage as far as allowing and asking. It's kind of that horse trading. In order to get these entitlements, we need some assurances, and to make the findings that we would be able to actually approve this. They need to have adequate services, including transportation networks. So that's why when we presented this to the Industrial Development Board, knowing that the infrastructure isn't there currently, and having them being interested, if BOMA thinks this is a good idea, their ability to administer the TIF or whatever other funding mechanism, like they did with Indian Lake, they're there to take the direction from BOMA and play their role as well. So really and they're not asking for any entitlements. They're just, again, like you say, is this something that they're barking up the wrong tree? Because and I recycled this Davidson Academy really primarily to show that they intend on the green space, maintaining that, and then the roadway. All the buildings don't mean anything on this particular one. And the Tennessee property up here is the 30 acres isn't really even shown, but I wanted to give you guys at least an image. But even developing a conceptual plan like this, thousands upon thousands of dollars, and then going to hearing, all the staff time that they have to pay for. So before they start spinning their wheels for no reason, they just wanted to know, is this something that we as a city would be interested in entertaining them exploring further? So
Well, I think we have a responsibility, because I know a lot of people, and I'm one of them, struggle with the growth of Hendersonville so fast. And when I first moved here in '87, I think it was 30,000 people. So I understand that, but one of our biggest responsibilities, since growth is coming, is to control the growth for what's best for our citizens, our roadways, our safety, our fire and police. And so I think we have to entertain all these ideas. Not saying approve them by any means, but we have to entertain them, because it's coming and we really can't stop it. And people are moving left and right. I think we're the 38th best city to live in the United States. And I think #1 in Tennessee. I mean, people still see the stuff online. They're coming. So you can't stop them. I mean, it's why our housing prices gone through the roof. But I think we generally have to entertain anything to control and maintain the growth of this city, even if we don't approve it.
I have a question for Jesse. I think you're the best one to answer this for me. So, let's say this concept were fully built. I'm assuming that the appropriate thing for Stop 30 would be to have a median the whole length of it, similar to the commercial part of Indian Lake Boulevard. And so that you can have those protected left turns and everything. And then that the Drake's Creek Stop 30 intersection would need to be widened and reconfigured significantly to have turning lanes in both directions. Am I right? Is that accurate, or would there be even more or less, or what?
Sure, I think the medians on Stop 30 would be welcome probably by everyone. Um, that is a kind of the Cadillac way to build out a street with center medians, especially if they are landscaped to provide a buffer and look good and safer that way as well. The board has recently adopted the guidelines for traffic impact studies. So any development that comes in is going to have to study the surrounding areas as far as what traffic is going to impact that area and then respond to mitigate those issues. So it could be a widening of the bridge, but the bridge is going to be widened through the project we're doing now. It could be an opportunity where it comes in at the same time we're doing the project to maybe at a less cost to widen the bridge even a little bit further. But all those traffic circulation type impacts would have to be addressed by the project or it wouldn't be approved. And it'll be part of the standard process.
Do you, I know you anticipated we would break ground on the bridge within a year. And do you expect that to completely fix the flooding problems? Not like 100-year flood, but your run of the mill, stormwater drainage problems will be completely resolved.
And that intersection is also going to be widened, so it'll enhance the capacity of that intersection. And the thing I think, there was a good point made is most people think that cities build roads, but developers build roads and cities maintain roads. So a lot of the improvements we like to see, like center medians and widenings, they happen because of development. Now, the cities come in to fix a problem in a bridge, and cities do projects like that. Okay, there's inadequate elevation, so we'll fix it. But by and large, developers build the infrastructure in the city, and that's how it comes into play. Cities don't go in front and do it, and then cities just maintain it after they accept it.
So, Jay, do not have to answer this, but what do you think the chances are that this project would get us Stop 30 completely done with medians from New Shackle to Drake's Creek?
This project by itself would not. But that's why we went to the Industrial Development Board to see if we could do an overlay TIF for New Shackle, Stop 30, all the internal roads in here, all the way over to Drake's Creek. We could have a project or have a TIF for encompassing all of that, which then could increase our eligibility for state grants if we actually are bringing money to these projects for the necessary improvements on New Shackle.
And there's just no way to know what the time frame on.
No,
No.
but as far as the improvements to Stop 30 itself, in the interim, if this project is approved in the future, I would suspect the bridge is already done. When they're doing their traffic analysis, they're going to have to show that the road network is where they're coming from, and is the level of service or whatever measure that we're using for those intersections, is that able to hold the capacity of their average daily trips? If it's not, just like with In and Out, they have to do roadway improvements because that was pretty good. It was developed recently, but it was inadequate to adequately service. So we couldn't make the findings to approve that project without them offering up offsite improvements. That would be a similar, if when this application is going through the planning process, if they don't have adequate services, they are going to have to implement those either by themselves, or if we have that TIF in that area for improved infrastructure, we could, once that's rolling, that timing we can work with.
And I know you and I talked about this at the IDB meeting, but can you share a comparison between the expected traffic counts with the current zoning versus the?
So average daily trips or peak hour trips, like when you're looking at residences, they're leaving pretty much in the same rush hour in the morning to go to work. And so when you're looking at peak hour, you're looking at that time when people are going to work or coming home from work. When you're looking at a conference center or a hotel, you can still look at, do they have peak hours, but you also look at their average daily trips. So it's a different measure because they trickle in all through the day. They go, it's not a mass going in and a mass going out. Part of the other discussion on this is I was asking them is when they do move, if they do end up moving forward, exploiting that linkage between of the greenway with the hotel and conference center so that once cars are on the site, have alternative modes of transportation to get them over using the greenway trail that they will be constructing to get them over to Indian Lake Village to go to the restaurants and do the retail, but keeping the traffic off the road. So again, looking at minimizing identifying initially all the potential impacts and then going through designing the project to either self-mitigate or through their design features, really addressing some of those potential impacts. So again, the reso's drafted out to kind of highlight some of those typical ones that they would need to address. But we could add more if either VOMA or the committee wants to add additional ones on there. Or even the citizens, if that anything can be added to reso, and it's just giving them a heads up that if you move forward, proceed with caution, know that these things are going to be expected.
So
I would like to send it with a neutral recommendation so that we can have a full conversation at BOMA without saying yay or nay.
Can I ask a question?
yes, we might.
This is circling back to the financial part, but it sounds like there would be more revenue for the city. We need operational revenue, but we would also be losing 200 homes of city property tax. Have we started to look at whether it's a financial benefit for the city or loss, or is there a pro forma that's going to be provided?
There's an easy answer to that, Mike, is the fact that the old saying is residents don't necessarily pay for themselves. And that's true on property tax level, just because of the space they take up compared to, say, density and commercial, industrial. So the idea is you're going to have twofold. One, you're going to pull in all the property tax, which will be commercial grade, so it's 40 cents compared to 25 and everything else. So for that space, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck there. But then the flip side is you're going to also generate a whole lot more sales tax, which, the city makes good use of. And that's twofold. One, the sales tax is coming in, but also it's not people that are going to be staying here. So they're going to come in. The idea is, just like any other tourism, you want to come in and spend a bunch of money, and we want them to leave before they need anything. So,
So I will say that I'm not opposed to a development like this coming to Hendersonville. I think it would be fabulous. But this location, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to be a no. I know it will move to Beaumont anyway, but I'm gonna be a no right now because I really think we should be looking at another location.
The only thing I have to say about that, and I don't disagree with you, is no matter where this goes, we're going to be in this room with this, just the same amount of people, no matter what. We need to vote on this.
We still need a second on the motion.
Oh, we didn't get one.
Okay,
We still need.
I did the motion, right? Yeah.
Rachel did.
Oh, sir. Oh,
It can die for a second if you're both negatives.
no, I'm not.
Okay.
So, Chair.
you got a question?
I have a question.
Oh, please.
So y'all talking about widening stop 30. We've already given the right of way for the water and sewer and gas on our property. So how is that going to affect us? Because you can't take it off Lawson Point and the meadows, obviously. We've already got all that. I mean, that's already laid, right? The water, gas and sewer is on our property.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you have to look at. Who's gonna, the city be responsible for that? I mean, we don't want any more of our property taken, obviously. I mean, my dad's gonna pass here and, he's been here all his life. So that's another concern that I have for y'all, because that's already buried. I mean, we gave that right away in the 80s when the men of Lawson Poison came. They buried the lines, but the gas came later, right?
So, I know nothing like this has been to design yet, but I was kind of in my mind assuming that the widening would happen on the side that's currently farmland that would be getting developed. Is Timothy's, is that?
Yes, when we were looking at the stop 30 future land use plan, that was the vision, was that the needed right of way would be coming off of the southern line, not
So
the
we're
Lawson.
not-
Which is our side. But what do y'all think about the having to move all that? I mean, that's gotta be costly, right?
Yeah. I think all the analysis would need to be done. We'd have to look at what the right of way currently, what the width is. Are the designs adequate to fit inside that already, or would that need to be moved? If there's a TIF and there's stuff that needs to be moved, that's gonna need to be part of the analysis and part of the,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See this said, didn't I just bury that recently? Or was that fiber optics as well for, I think, AT&T.
But the cost would be the developer.
or the, yes, I mean, ultimately either through a TIF or the developer, depending on not the city.
But they could have,
The-
if they don't want to sell the land.
You know,
And I'll have more to say, and if this comes before one of the two concerns that I have. First, we're looking at stop 30, and for 6 years since I've been on the board, I've been trying to get stop 30 fixed. But we're not only looking at stop 30 here, we're looking at Drakes Creek Road. If you come down Drakes Creek Road, it's a mess. And so this doesn't even consider working on Drakes Creek Road to make the improvement. And also New Shackle. This has a new road going out to New Shackle, and as the way I understand it, I don't know what property this new road would go through. I guess it's Mr. Barrett's property, because it looks like he's got the property that it would have to go through. So he would have to approve to sell his property for that road. But what we'll have then is we'll have Glenbrook, a red light at Glenbrook. We'll have a red light at stop 30, and now we'll have another red light in between them. And right now, the red light at stop 30 backs up traffic at Glenbrook way back almost to the interstate. So we're going to put another traffic light in there. So, I mean, this plan doesn't even address Drakes Creek, and it doesn't even address New Shackle.
Yeah, the widening of New Shackle right through there.
Right. It doesn't address that. And that's a state road. And let me tell you, if you think we can get things done quick through the state,
We don't.
I mean, the mayor and I and Mark now, we've been working on Old Drakes Creek and New Shackle to get a red light there.
Redefine quick.
You know, so
The lake exit backs up onto the bypass
Yeah.
already. So that's a concern too.
I have one other point to make too, is about the turning lane. Why would you need a turning lane over by us when the subdivision is not even there? On the part of our farm going down to the substation. There's nowhere to turn there. So why would you need a turning lane there? We don't want stop 30, and I'm speaking for my family and the residents there. We don't want it to look like Indian Lake. We don't want trees in our median. We don't want sidewalks. You know, we're
And that's really part of the discussion now is like, these are the types of comments that we take back and we let them know that that's a concern. That's one,
That's good.
very valid. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, my dad's been there since he was 7 years old. You know, we had to tear the farmhouse down because it was old and decrepit, but you know, we're still there.
In order to have, say, Drakes Creek, in order to require any offsite improvements, we have to demonstrate that there's a nexus. So we would have to show as part of the transportation study that there's a significant amount of traffic coming to the conference center down Drakes from, was it Drakes Creek Farm, those areas, without Durham Farms. Without that, we don't have that nexus in order to require any offsite improvements. So we have to operate within, our legal authority. And part of why we adopted that transportation plan or transportation study was really to essentially codify what our expectations are of developers so that we're not doing this, off the cuff requirements, not systematically across the board. So I think we've got all the pieces in place to go back and let them know what is going to be expected when they get to BOMA. But to Fort Sumner, if they're willing to do town halls for these communities, the more information and the more feedback that we get early in the process, I think we do a better service to our developers, our landowners that are interested in pouring big projects and money into the city.
Sure.
So, as the economic development person, like I want to make sure I'm guiding them through the process. I never give them a final answer, and I don't think you guys are at this point, but just letting them know that it's not a no is what they're looking for right now.
I also think a big part, like y'all said, when we start talking about a resolution for it, you include all these things. I think it's really important that the points you brought up, really, really valid. So that way, you know, and like Jay said, for the developers and the people that are thinking about doing this, hey, if we're gonna do this, we're probably gonna have to look at a tip because we're probably gonna have to go down and grab this spot on Drake's Creek, this spot. You know, they know that the expectation from the city is that we want you to correct these infrastructure problems. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying this is what we want you to do, because they can say no too.
You can say no also.
Exactly. But the idea is, I think that's where cities and municipalities as a whole we've kind of, and I say it for me when I was on the planning commission for the county, we don't tell them exactly what we want. And so then when they come forward, they bring something we don't want. And I think that's on us with really good community input, with really good participation from our municipality leadership, that we say, hey, this is a fine project as long as you do A through X. And there's nothing wrong with putting a lot of restrictions or and it's not even restrictions, like, hey, our expectation is that it's connectivity, it's infrastructure, whatever it might be. And that there's green space. We include all those things. And then that gives them a realistic view and they know what they're walking into.
Mr. Chairman, I need to go prepare for our 7 o'clock meeting.
We need to launch this meeting too,
Yes.
so
Sorry.
Could you roll my item on discussion
Yes.
for your
Yes.
next meeting?
yes.
We
Roll
can.
before.
Can we send it, instead of checking positive, negative, or neutral, can we just send it with no recommendations?
That would be a neutral recommendation.
Yeah,
So
right now we have a Collins with a neutral recommendation.
And I second that.
Okay.
And then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those
No.
opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
So is the developer gonna show up to Bowman and answer questions?
Yes, this was very short notice. I wasn't expecting it to come to the committee this fast, but
Okay.
they're out of town and they have a family issue tonight, so they weren't able to make it, but they did want to be here. We got the consolation prize.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
Y'all are welcome to stay, but we'll move on.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to something that's not related to that. You're welcome to leave. You can say, hang out.
Can you go forward? Read through that. Was there 29 months before that?
Did I hear it? That was in red way.
It's a ruin.
Is that-
Yes.
Is it possible to look at?
I've seen this.
Okay.
So we've recently. Yeah. And almost all have been. Because there was no parcel centers that we need to acquire property. Done. The next step is so we can finish the plan. Send it to me, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, sorry.
It's like a.
I've been invited over.
Guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, folks.
And we need to continue.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for coming. So, number one is now number two. So the reading of resolution 2025-20. The resolution amending the personal rules and regulations of the city of Hendersonville relative to employees carryover accumulated vacation leave. And I believe that, Eddie and Mark are sponsors of this. Do you want to help us out a little bit?
I'm sure Mark can say something about it. I was recently informed that when an employee has more on vacation time, but it rolls over to the sick leave bank. And so he or she loses that vacation time if they don't use it with them. There's a certain amount of vacation time that they can carry over. Anything over that number
They lose.
they lose. So what this resolution does is they don't lose it anymore. What it does, it goes into the sick leave bank and they can use it for years of service. This is exactly what the state does, and I was able to utilize when I retired from the state. So this prevents any employee from losing it. It goes to sick leave for years of service and can help them on having more time counted toward their years of service.
Mark, I'm sorry that we even have to discuss this.
It's a win-win, yeah.
I think the other thing that we were looking at too with this is that, where it's a win for the city too, is that it, right now, the way it's written, anybody who has accumulated these hours, the way the sick leave is, I think, is that half of it could be cash outlay and half of it,
Time off.
time off. But what this will do is it kind of takes away that cash outlay part of it, of the unused vacation.
Right.
So there is a potential for somebody to lose by the new policy, because if they have excess
Yes,
vacation
currently.
they would get paid for it if they retired, but after this goes into effect.
Don't answer that question.
We talked earlier.
Yeah, so your average employee, say, Joe employee gets 200 hours per year of vacation and only uses 100 for 2-3 years in a row. What happens right now is when they go to the next fiscal year, it just gets reduced to the policy limit. So they're not able to cash those dollars out. Only upon when you leave the city and you retire can you cash those dollars out. And at that point, since the vast majority of all employees have been subject to that limit, there's no cash out available for the majority. There is an employee here or there that may have an excess, but for 99% of the employees, there's no excess and there's no really cash out provision. Now that if you were hired, very extremely. If you were hired before 97, that's where your sick time at that point in 97, they said, hey, we're going to quit paying your sick time out, half cash and half pension, just going to go to service credit. So what this says is that those employees who were hired prior to 97, they have the ability to cash half sick and they're sick. They have the ability to cash half out and take half as service credit. This resolution says we're going to put these sick hours in a separate bank where they're all service credit, and those hours aren't half and half. But typically they don't roll over, because right now, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you don't even have the option. The vast majority of all employees.
But clarification, just to make sure this resolution wouldn't go into effect until December 31st of this year. But in the case that you have someone that is prior to 1997, and if they decide to sever before the end of the year, we're still obligated under the old policy of half cash, half.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. So
But this treats everybody the same on vacation leave.
Yeah.
Right now, they lose it. With this policy, it goes into a special sick bank account or sick leave that they can use for years of service.
Jason, you are the head of HR over here. Is this a really, really good thing?
I think the ability to not lose that, but have it rolled over to sick leave and use it for accrual is a very generous thing to do.
Okay. Do we need any more discussion?
I've got a question.
Please.
So policy coming around, it sounds good and it sounds like it checks all the boxes.
Looks
Has
that way.
past employees been able to cash out?
So past employees who were hired to pre-September 1, 1997 have been able to cash out half. Those employees who got hired after that time frame, if they left, have not been able to cash out. So instead, it just what we're talking about gets applied to
Sick
TCRS.
vacation.
So vacation is required to be cashed out by law. So regardless where that stands, what we have done is we said this is the threshold you can carry over from year to year. So if somebody leaves within the year and they're over their yearly threshold, by law, we are required to cash that out. But
Okay.
hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, so you shared it with the staff. Everybody loves it. Everybody's on board.
I don't know if it's been.
well, it's an extra benefit to staff because right now, if they're over in vacation, like this year, we had employees who lost vacation time because they had excess, but they didn't take off. So We have a policy limit that HR runs through at the end of the year, and if you're over the excess, it goes away. Well, now it doesn't go away. It sits in their sick bank so that they can use it for sick.
Okay.
So it would be a benefit to employees. Benefit they currently.
Nobody.
Running out of time, but I just have one quick question for Chief Bush. This is a good thing.
Yes,
Okay,
it's good for future employees. Absolutely, 110%.
okay.
Anybody hired after 97, it's going to benefit them tremendously.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept this resolution.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. There we have it. We're getting ready to go into Bowman. Other agenda items, Cement Truck Parking has been rolled to another time, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I'll very, thank you all.